What's going on, creators? Yeah, I just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I'd like to talk a little bit about breaking out of like spiraling cycles that just start getting you more and more upset, more and more fearful, more and more drained as you kind of resist it more and more. It kind of keeps persisting and growing as you keep kind of focusing on this negative spiral. And I want to share some techniques to break out of those cycles, realizing first and foremost that it's only ever now. So now is when you break out of that cycle. That's the only time that ever happens. So that's like going to be the first real key thing that we're going to focus our attention on at the moment, is just realizing that here and now is when this happens. It's not this future, oh, when is some external thing going to save me from my thoughts? Oh, when is the government going to come in and make some utopia for me in the quote unquote future? When is my relationships going to heal? When is all this going to happen? It's like, well, now. This is when you start to do it. So it's like when you start experiencing a lot of negativity and a lot of drifting into states of undesirable separation and fear, a lot of times then, as that becomes more and more prevalent, we see it more and more, which then reinforces these beliefs. And a lot of times if you're believing things that are not true, believing lies of fear, it feels constricting, it feels frustrating and difficult, and all of those are intentional. It's like looking at what is and not judging it, but trying to just take it at face value. Looking at your emotional states as not being some accident or some coincidence, but actually realizing more and more that they are there to help guide you to more and more levels of heaven on earth, and feeling the fruits of the spirit, which is love, joy, peace, all of these things. You only ever feel that now. So if you're not feeling any type of taste of those, now is when you start to turn it around. So first and foremost, is bring yourself back to the present moment. Breathing is a good way to do that. Focusing on your breath gets you out of your mind and creates separation, so you can start to observe the thoughts instead of becoming carried away with this stream of consciousness, which in a lot of ways is your past beliefs and assumptions being brought to the surface of your consciousness to either continue in or to make a new choice. And it's in knowing that you can make a new choice where you can start to snap out of these downward spirals and enjoy your conscious day. It's not, oh, in 50 years from now I can enjoy my life once I've achieved all these different things and earn it. Or like a lot of people, in like religious communities, like, well, once I, go through this entire lifetime of suffering and die, well, then I can connect with God and experience heaven. Even though, Jesus made it very clear that the kingdom of God is within you. And to seek first the kingdom of God, and God's righteousness, His righteousness. Just look it up. It's in the Bible. And so actually kind of applying those concepts makes it easier to kind of create that space. But if the kingdom of God is within you and God is love, and that should kind of go together, that love is within you, and yet you can start feeling that right now. And so as you get out of this chaos mind of thinking that you're separate from God, separate from separate from people, separate from everything, it's like, oh, I'm just a victim of circumstance. It couldn't possibly be my own limiting beliefs and assumptions and disempowering thoughts and lies I believe about the nature of reality that I got taught to by the matrix world, that's verifiably time and time again just wrong. And so it's best to kind of just throw a lot of that shit away, especially when you feel it within. It's feeling awful. That's a sign that it's out of alignment with love. And so if it's out of alignment with love, be still. First connect with it. Hey, how long am I going to spend the eternal now just in my mind suffering about this, telling myself shit that I believe and I feel it, but it's negative. is not what I desire. What I desire is just to be at peace. Well, for one, choose peace. For two, start working on your relationship with your creator. That's a big thing of this. The more that you start to think and ponder on God and heaven and things that are good, that are peaceful, that bring joy, the sooner you start to rise in consciousness. And if you can't do that just by being still, turn off all the distractions, turn off the fucking screens, and just find a spot to take some breath in through your nose, breathe in peace, release chaos, and start just letting your mind be still. You might get some thoughts that are triggering, but the more that you're able to observe the thoughts without being triggered by it and realizing that it's just a thought, it has no real power. It has the power that you've given it as the observer of the thought, that you believe this, your faith is in it, and that's what is the power, is your faith. And so as you start to connect more with the present moment, being still, then ask God what to do to help you to realize that what you desire is already what is. It's like you need to get out of this linear way of thinking about stuff, about, well, first I need this external thing to make me feel a certain way. Oh, I need something that I may never get out here to feel a certain way. And the thing of it is as you do get the thing out here, well, there's a temporary satisfaction from it, but it quickly is, either you double down and think, oh, well, if I just had more of it, then it would have worked. Or, you just keep spinning your wheels, pushing your future happiness and peace and joy and all of these things that God created you to feel and express in form now, to some imaginary point in time, and then spend the only time that is actually real in your mind, suffering, probably making others suffer unintentionally, but it's kind of what happens. And so one of the next things you can do if you do start to spiral is realize that the more that you are in your mind and experiencing that state, the more that state is going to externalize into form. And just by knowing that, you can actually grow faith, because you can grow faith whether things work or doesn't work by connecting the dots, looking backwards, asking for help in discerning that, seeing how, well, first I woke up in kind of a bad mood, well, then I stubbed my toe and it got worse, then I was driving to work and I was out of gas, well, then I was had to go to the gas station. I didn't have my credit card, so I just had to pay in cash, and I had to go inside, and there was somebody paying a whole lot of attention to lotto tickets, and I'm standing here for 15 minutes waiting for them to sort all this lotto ticket shit out. Now I'm late. Oh, now I lost my attendance bonus. And then, the shit just compounds as you are expressing that state. But in realizing that, you can use the law of reversibility to go, oh, well, if my state of mind and just my beliefs and everything else, if I'm unconsciously doing this, I can consciously choose a new choice. The highest choice that I feel there is at this particular moment is realizing that God does the work. And so part of the slave programming is, oh, I gotta do, I gotta follow the law perfectly in religious circles. Oh, I gotta be righteous. Oh, I gotta do all these mighty works and things. And it's like, I don't know how, but I'll let my ego mind try to figure it out, which just brings a lot of drama. And you just get to a point with it where it's just like you realize, though, that God does the work, and your job is to be still and realize that the work's already been done. It's bringing this future to here and now, and in that there's gratitude without an opposite. Where the world, gratitude kind of means that you get something, which makes you feel a certain way. Well, the downside of that binary is then when it's taken from you, there's a tremendous feeling of loss and despair and everything else. But gratitude without this opposite, without this binary, is in realizing that God does the work, that everything's playing out perfectly to help you. You know, most of the problems and what's taking a lot of the efforting and everything is just the resistances that we're meeting along this bridge of incidents that God is creating to get you to the destination faster and faster. You know, it's like you can only experience who you are, and who you're conscious of being in relationship with God. That gets externalized into the circumstances and events of your life and all these symbolic relationships. But you know, when you realize that, hey, God does the work, it almost seems like counterintuitive, because it's like, oh, I'm facing all my fears now, and it's like, what the fuck, you know? It's like I put my faith in God, and now it's like I'm getting attacked and shit, you know? And so it's like, what you start to realize is a twofold thing. For one, only God is real. There's only one power. And that grows your faith. When whatever happens is going on, is you can start to see how the inner conversations, the inner talking, the voice that kept you small, that kept you a slave, you have to let go of these things, you know, before you can grow into who you are in Christ. You know, if you're, you know, if you can be, do, and have anything, but you keep creating from a slave mindset, you know, are you really free? You know, so it's like, if you are used to living in a prison, for example, and then you find out you can be, do, and have anything, and all you want to do is be the guy with the most commissary. It's like, okay, you're thinking like an inmate, you know. It's like, you know, or be like the big boss on the fucking yard, or whatever you want to be, you know, from a prison mindset. It's like, okay, you're thinking like a prisoner, but you can be out of prison. You know, you can do more than what you're expecting, because you're expecting from a very limited point of view. And so a lot of this stuff, when it gets brought to you, when you let it go, you realize more and more the truths of the promises of God, and seeing those kinds of things being manifested more and more so in your life, not without somebody like telling you about it. I mean, it's like, this is a knowing that you can experience for yourself. I encourage you to test it, because that's the only way you start to really know it, is through the testing. And you know, another thing you can do, you know, when kind of shifting to that mindset of, you know, God's in control, for one, only love is real, for two, and if I'm experiencing something in the here and now that's causing a bunch of resistance and drama, once I let go of these resistances and dramas, healing is going to replace that. You know, a feeling of, and what tends to happen is just like almost a fear of love, that as you continue to work on that fear of love, you know, because the slave mind thinks when something happens and you feel these things, well, that's just going to lead to more punishment or more suffering, or whatever. You know, but in a lot of just letting go of the limiting beliefs and the assumptions and the disempowering attitudes and everything else, when you let go of that, it's almost like a brick that you've been holding that kept you at a low vibration, and as you drop it, it's like you naturally just rise. And so it's like getting into more of a, I don't need to fix myself, you know, kind of attitude, is another way where you can start to snap out of the cycle. You know, where it's like you can radically just accept how you feel about the situation, and instead of judging yourself as being like, oh, you should feel shameful for feeling that kind of way, or you should feel guilty for feeling that kind of way, instead of feeling like, hey, you're a child of God, that God loves right here and right now, and you should feel great because God is for you and not against you, and God has amazing things in store for you that are expressing themselves now, and as you go into higher and higher levels of realizing the connected nature of all things, and that only, and again, only love is real, you know. And so that's the good thing, is, you know, perfect love casts out fear, because fear has torment, is suffering. And so perfect love then, which is God, is perfect love, has no fear, you know. So realizing more and more so that when you're feeling these downward spirals, most, if not all of it, is because you're believing a thought of fear that's not real and not actually the nature of reality or who you are or the nature of things. And so realizing more of that kind of stuff can start snapping you out of these downward spirals. One of the other spirals that I hear a lot is a hopeless spiral, where it's like expecting the future to constantly be worse than the present moment based on a past, which is an illusion. Um, and by what I mean by that is like the narratives of the past for the past 20 years that I've been aware of, from the media through culture, are not real in the sense they're fake narratives. It's a grabbing these dots, connecting them in a kind of disempowering way. But I'm not saying that that's even intentional on a lot of levels, because it's like you see that locally in small towns that have newspapers where it's like if it bleeds, it still leads, and it's like I'm drawn, to the front page of things if I'm like, at the, checkout or something. I see that, oh, what's this about? And I'll like kind of read it while I'm in line. It's like there's things that draw our attention, and a lot of the stuff going on in the world is how we're telling ourselves about these things. It's like, I hear like a lot of Christian people be like, okay, well, we battle not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities and spiritual wickedness in high places and all this type of stuff. But then they want to bring it right back to the physical and point at the bad man and start to blame them for all the problems going on in the world. The way I understand, and this is just my belief, it's like the problem is the narratives you're telling yourself about these particular things. It's like the government is a great example of that, because you see a lot of people that make government their god and obey it and worship it and need this. It's all biblical too. It's like in I can't remember what book. It's like they had to choose to follow God or listen to a king, and they chose to listen to a king instead of But everything is going on here and now. I mean, there's nothing new under the sun happening. It's all just creation, and states of consciousness and everything else, which you can start to get these different understandings about it. Where it's like you see the government, like I'll pray for Trump and Biden. I hope nothing but the best for both of them. There was a time where I despised every sitting, George Bush. I spent those years in hatred, and Obama, same thing. If you're constant, and then there's just like the delusions that came from like this derangement of just like, well, you either hate Trump or you're not on our side. It's like that's a fucked up way to look at things. And a lot of this stuff didn't make sense. They'd be like, oh, he's such a racist, and it's like, well, what did he say that was racist? It's like, shut up, you maggot. It's like, I don't give a fuck about these. I don't need a king to rule over me. I just see them as other just guys, just other humans, just people. It's like I don't have this big, oh, put them on a fucking pedestal type thing. It's again so much of people not owning their own shit, and that's okay. It's everybody's in their own process. The only thing you can do is do you, and you can start working on those narratives you're telling yourself about, the things that are triggering. You don't have to put your attention on the shit all the time and then try to make a worldview out of that. You start moving your attention from these things that create separation, and instead of looking at it as being outside of God's design, start asking yourself, go within and say, what function does this serve for awakening? How is this part of my consciousness? Because as you've put attention on it, you've also grown into more and more levels of awareness about a particular thing. That another person is not on that same level of awareness towards. So it's almost like their perception and your perception have been altered. Sometimes in these echo chambers to create false realities that you can then project on everybody and everything else. And that's a whole lot of like the Matrix world, is living in a false illusion and projecting it on everybody else, which a lot of times just, the things that you're seeing in other people is going on within you. And some people just don't like the reflection and want to break it because they don't like what's going on within themselves and they just don't get it yet. And the thing of it is, it's not for you to worry about, because that starts to get in the same kind of downward spiral of, I got to do the work, I'm alone, I need to force my will onto that other being to conform, when you just can, and that's just a story, that's just a narrative that you are telling yourself. But the thing of it is, you can just as easily be going, oh well, that's an individualized aspect of like our creator being expressed in form. I may not understand what this means, but I'm not going to hate it and try to destroy it or try to manipulate it, because it's been brought to me through this perfect process for me to extend love to, and to feel love and to feel joy and to get some sort of understanding that makes me happy and makes people, that's the kind of shift in mindset that can start getting you out of these downward mental spirals. It's in the narratives that you're telling yourself, but more and more so in being able to catch that in the present moment and start to, well, why am I telling myself that narrative? Why am I telling myself this thing about that person, that event, that circumstance, that part of creation that's bothering me and triggering me? Where is this coming from? And just in realizing that there's a different way to look at it, that another being could be right next to you and see a totally different thing that isn't triggering, that isn't deranging, it isn't, it's, and I feel like this way when it comes to like politics. I feel like politics is all reflective of consciousness on some level, but you have the left wing and the right, which both of them are doing the same shit, and which is when you have one group pointing their finger at the other, they're both doing it, but the right, at least where I live, because it's more of a conservative area, it's more seeing like the left as being like demon possessed, or just fucking just like, what are you doing? This is clown world shit. Like, you're not thinking. It's like delusional. You're not making sense. You're projecting onto me the shit you're doing, and it's tempting to see the world in only that way. When you take a step back and you listen to what the left is saying, without this fucking I want to attack you and like, I want to be right so that you can be wrong kind of mentality, instead of just like, I'm just trying to understand what you're thinking. It's like, how do you see that? Where are you getting this take from? It doesn't make sense, because it's and they're seeing it from a mirror of what's going on, too, and so it's like, both people are battling this reflection from totally different sides, both of which think they're doing the right thing, and both are polar opposites. It's really fascinating when you're able to just look at this creation and just look at what is, without just wanting to, I need to destroy this, I need to make that wrong so I feel superior and right, and be the good one, to make somebody else the bad one, but it's different techniques, there's different ways to snap out of these things, because it's only ever now. It's like, so you either snap out of it now, or you continue in this spiral. However long you want to do that. On some level, there's some pleasure that comes from these downward spirals, and that's another way to kind of snap out of it, is to really see what brings some sort of a satisfaction to you by staying in your mind, attacking, or just the separation, that us versus them, if I just attack this person, I can bring them down so that they, whatever that is, start to make that change. It's just see, hey, okay, I'm doing this, there's got to be a reason. What feels good about this? It does feel kind of good that you see people get what they deserve at times, and it just comes to satisfaction of like, they hurt me, so I'm gonna hurt them back, and eye for an eye type shit. Where it's just like there is some sort of like thing there in a attack where you can feel out, and just acknowledging that exists is the first kind of like space to maybe do something different. It's like, okay, well, if I do get some sort of pleasure, maybe I'm just thinking this shit because I feel a certain way and I want to change it. I want to feel some sort of pleasure in the getting even, or whatever it is, not taking into account that everybody's reaping what they're sowing in consciousness, and it's like everybody's reflecting a state of consciousness and the fucking fruits of that consciousness. So don't think that you have to, like they're already it's already going on. They're reaping what they're sowing, and if they're reaping seeds of separation, a lot of times in fear, there's get that shit back, and because there's only one of us, there's only one consciousness, expressing through like the many, like through everybody else, it's like everything's connected, and so to hurt another, you're just hurting yourself, and so there's, and that includes if you're hurting, somebody else in your mind, that's causing you to feel a different state of consciousness. But there's probably a little niblet of pleasure in whatever you're doing, and so if you recognize that you're just trying to feel pleasure instead of pain, well, then you can start to naturally be drawn to thoughts that are just more pleasurable. It's like, well, I'm doing this because I want to feel a certain way, to feel pleasurable, that I want to not be suffering. There's just another way to look at it. It makes me feel like I'm not suffering. It makes me feel just a little bit better. Well, if you just want to feel a little bit better, then we start moving in a direction of feeling better. It's like, well, if I just want to feel better, what thought feels better? Be still and allow infinite intelligence to start implanting your consciousness with new thoughts, with higher ideals, with things that actually are benefits you, and start to work on that relationship. But I think I'm gonna bounce. So I appreciate everybody liking, sharing, subscribing, all the social networking things. I appreciate your spiritual support and your financial support. Thank you for that. And until the next now, God bless.